Welcome, everybody. My name is Colleen Curlin. I lead the programming for the Battery, both on property and online. I'm so excited to welcome you this evening as part of Sparked. Sparked is the Battery signature conference where we explore what connects us to ourselves and to each other. We encourage you to take this opportunity to look ahead and think about what it means to build a better future for generations ahead. We had a great start to Sparked last week with another amazing week of programming ahead, including more talks, workshops like tonight, and wellness events. If you're interested in joining more events, you can see the full schedule on thebatteryspark.com. I'll drop a link in the chat. But thanks for joining tonight for the cure for the imposter syndrome. Now, if you're here, I'm sure you're familiar with this phenomenon called the imposter syndrome. But just in case you came out of curiosity, it's where high achieving people doubt their skills, talents, accomplishments, and experience persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. Super fun, right? Yeah, right. Well, I can admit here with all of you tonight that I have felt and still feel this syndrome sometimes. Now, each of you might have a light case that makes you overly cautious and risk avoidant, or an intense case that can be debilitating. Either way, tonight we are going to learn how to stop hiding behind this false belief that we are imposters and offer what is truly ours to offer. It's my pleasure to welcome Michael Tertes, the founder of the University of Superheroes. He's a coach, a mentor, and a thought partner to value-driven leaders across the country. On top of it all, he's a creative in residence with the Battery, and I have the pleasure of working with him often. He taught a workshop at last year's Sparked called Defeating Your Arch Nemesis, and it was overwhelming when he asked the audience what would be the next topic for the next workshop. And this was the topic. So I'm so glad to be doing this follow-up tonight at Sparked this year. Now, before I hand things over to Michael, just a few housekeeping items. We're recording tonight, and we'll post the recording on our new YouTube channel, The Battery TV. I'll share a link to that in the chat as well. The chat is open and available, and if you would like to connect with Michael and each other. And I think with that, Michael, I'll hand it to you.
Whew. Okay. First of all, I just want to look at everybody. It's, we've been sheltered in place here for 10 months, and it's just great to see people, even if it's virtual. Of course, the original plan was to do this workshop, a couple months after Sparked last year, and to do it in person. So this has been a long time coming. In fact, I want to retell that story a little bit that Colleen just told. So I was delivering the workshop last year, Defeat Your Arch Nemesis, and one of the participants said, we're doing a sharing moment. She raised her hand. She said, "My arch nemesis says I'm an imposter." And I went, "Yeah, right. The imposter syndrome, that's really common. Anyone else experience the imposter syndrome?" And 90 people or whoever, they're all raised their hands. It was 100%. And so I said, "So should I do an imposter syndrome workshop?" And it was like, yeah. So a year and a day, because that was a year ago yesterday, a year and a day. So here we are. And I'm really hoping for the next workshop, we will be together in person, but we don't have any control over that. So a couple of things. The first thing, before I go any farther, the first thing is, let's give Colleen some love and some appreciation for virtual Sparked and all she does for us at the Battery, especially myself as a creative in residence member. She's just incredible to us. So you can do it in the chat, you can turn your camera on, but thank you, Colleen. Really appreciate you. So and then secondly, I want to thank all of you who are here now, because it's a cold and blustery night, and you could just as easily be in bed rewatching Bridgerton, which a lot of my friends already are. So you could be doing that, but you're here. And since you're here, I am going to give you 100% of what I can give you for the next 90 minutes. And I just want to say, I take it really seriously that you're here. I don't take it for granted. I'm grateful that you are here. and that we're here together. And I want to honor that. So thank you. And also, I would request that we really get here because the most important thing about this workshop that's going to actually help cure the imposter syndrome is to participate. It's actually part of the process is to do this together. So I'm going to ask that people fully participate. If you can turn on your camera, it would make a really big difference so that we can be together and see each other. If you can't, I totally get it. But if you can, please do. And then also, there's going to be opportunities for breakout sessions where just dyads where you get to talk about the content and some of what's come up. We're going to do a few sharing where people in the community can share what they're learning, what they're hearing, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And please, please, please participate. Please be the first one to raise your hand, the first one to share. It's good. It's going to make a massive difference. It's really going to make the difference as to whether or not we actually start getting the cure. So on that, to like start moving that along, if you could in your chat, if you're in for participating, put in the chat just I'm in exclamation point, and let's get people in. So I'm even great. I see it. I'm in. I'm in. I'm in. Wait, what just happened? I hit the wrong button. Chat. Okay. Good. 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 Excellent. All right. Just checking my notes. So even though I offered this workshop a year ago with all kinds of confidence from the stage, it probably wouldn't be surprising to you that creating a workshop on the imposter syndrome brought up my imposter syndrome. And so this has been quite a journey creating this workshop. I'll talk more about that as we go through, but like even an hour ago, I was like, oh, did I have that right? Oh my God, like that whole second guessing, doubting. And that's part of the dynamic we're going to be working with tonight. And I've been coaching now. I'm in my 15th year of coaching full time after 2 other careers that you can find out about if you want to chat with me sometime. Actually, 3 other careers. And one of the most common things I deal with is the imposter syndrome, is the way that people are in their own way because they feel like they don't deserve the place that they are. So I'm really excited to deliver this material to this community. And even though I've done a bunch of research and read books and watched TED Talks and listened to podcasts, I've done that. I actually have my very own particular way I come at this. And so I'm really excited to share the way I work with my clients and people in my community on the imposter syndrome. So I'm excited to share sort of my particular twist on this. So, okay, we're going to get started. The next thing to use the chat is now let's also get here by sharing, if you could put in the chat, where are you right now? And just one sentence about what drew you, to the workshop tonight. What caught your eye? What drew you to be here tonight? So we can kind of start getting together. So, I'm checking it out. San Francisco. So I can be more confident, better understanding self. Colleagues suggested I come. Great. I talk about this all the time. Help shed self-doubt. Good, 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 good. Someone's curious. You're in New York. Welcome, New York is in the house. Great. Interviewing for a new job. And I'm trying to catch the chat. Starting a new role. Sending off twin girls to college. They're feeling at risk for feeling like imposters is great. But understanding shortfalls, great. Okay, good. You're all in the right place. This is great. Thank you. So we are going to get started. I'm going to share my screen. And, oh, good. Someone said, the youngest and only woman on your executive team. For people, the initial research around imposter syndrome was actually done with women. And one of the interesting things about this phenomenon is that, first of all, 70% of people feel like an imposter. It's super common, but the percentage and intensity of people who feel like an imposter goes up if you are someone who you're in a culture where you're not in the dominant culture. So if you're a woman and you're working with men, if you're someone who didn't graduate from college, you're working with college graduates, if you're a person of color working in a traditionally white organization or context. So I'm glad someone brought that up right away. All right, I'm going to start sharing and we are off. Now I can't see my screen. Hold on. Okay, so I've had to make all of you small. So welcome to the Cure for the Imposter Syndrome. So the imposter syndrome is, as Colleen said, it's the experience you have when you doubt your skills, your talents, your accomplishments, and you have a persistent internalized fear of being exposed, like someone's going to find you out. It's pretty straightforward. Whenever we talk about it, people go, oh yeah, I get that. So it's very straightforward. Hold on. Why? Okay. So who has it? As I said, 70% of people have it. And it's all those smart, successful people that you think have their shit together, especially those smart, successful people who you think have their shit together more than you. They have it also. And that right there is part of moving towards the cure, is understanding that almost everyone you know has it, especially if they're smart, they're successful, they got stuff going on. They're riding the wave and the journey of feeling like an imposter, feeling like a fraud. And so I couldn't help myself when I was designing this. Here we are 10 months into a pandemic. I couldn't help myself but use the virus analogy. So the imposter syndrome is like a virus. And if you look at this chart here, or this graphic here, it starts by infecting your mind. So the way a virus works, right, is it goes into a healthy cell, it enters into a healthy cell, and then it takes over the cell's process of generating protein, and then it regenerates itself and it sends itself through the system and makes the system sick. The imposter syndrome is just like that. It enters the mind, and then actually I need to fix this chart already, is it enters the mind, it starts to work with your thoughts, and you have negative thoughts, and those negative thoughts lead to negative emotions, and that actually leads to negative ways you hold your body. It leads to physical it can lead to pain. It leads to physical feelings of anxiety, fear, worry, fight, flight, freeze, and it's generative. It's a positive feedback loop in that the more you have it, the more you get it. So it's like a virus, and it's self-reinforcing. And I want to see what my next, okay. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit later about this process of programming that we experience in our lives, and how it's like a virus, and how actually we can reprogram ourselves. So we're going to do a little symptoms assessment here. So I've got 18 symptoms. I'm going to ask you to get out a piece of paper and a pen, and simply keep score. I'm gonna read 18 symptoms, because you've caught the virus, the imposter syndrome virus. I'm gonna read 18 symptoms. For each one, just give yourself a check, and you're gonna get a score at the end. And this isn't some sort of weighted thing where, one is it's not weighted. You're just going to get a score out of 18. So the first is, do you discount your success? Like you do something, you succeed, and you discount it. Do you highlight your mistakes and failures? So you discount your success, but then you make a mistake and that becomes the thing you focus on. Do you diminish what comes easily to you? So if you have a success, but you didn't work hard, do you diminish and go, no big deal. That was easy for me. Do you tend towards perfectionism? Everything needs to be perfect all the time, every time. Do you overwork in order to prove yourself? This is a very common symptom. So to prove yourself, you work harder and harder and harder so as not to seem like a fraud. Do you experience persistent self-doubt? Just thinking poorly of yourself, doubting yourself, wondering if you're going to be able to succeed or do something, looking over your shoulder. Are you highly self-critical? Just constantly, we've that sort of what I call the head bully. It's like, you're not good, you're not smart. Are you highly self-critical? Do you beat yourself up when you make a mistake? So not just highlight it, but do you actually beat yourself up? So I call it running yourself over with the caboose. Like you make a mistake and then you make sure to really flog yourself for it. Do you negatively compare yourself to others? Like I said, all those successful people who have their shit together, do you always negatively compare yourself to them? Are you afraid of being exposed as a fraud? I put that one on so everyone would get at least one check. Are you afraid people will figure out you're faking it, or you're not sure that you know what you're doing, that you're kind of like one step ahead maybe? Do you not feel like you've earned your accomplishments? Like you got lucky. That's one later. Do you procrastinate due to the fear of making a mistake? Are you afraid of appearing conceited or arrogant? Super common for people who feel like a fraud is that if you actually, take responsibility and own your accomplishments, you'll look conceited and then it gets even worse. Do you feel alone or isolated in your belief that you're an imposter or a fraud? Do you think most people have their shit together more than you do? Do you feel like you just got lucky getting where you are, achieving what you've achieved? And lastly, do you think anyone could have done it? That sort of, well, I got here, but anyone could have gotten here. So add them up, write down your score. And I think what we want to do, I'm going to unshare. And, if you're open, again, participation is really important tonight so that we can normalize this experience that we all have. Is if you're open, stick in the chat, just put your score. I'll put mine. Nice. 8, 12, 16, 17, 11, 8, 11. A perfect score. 8, 8, 8, 12, 11, 8, 11, 7, 18, 11, 13, 9, 14, 15. All right. Okay, so we're in the right place, right? Okay. Thank you. Thanks for everyone who threw their score in. And the other thing I said is, this, I didn't spend the time like making some sort of, matrixed weighted thing where, for instance, if you feel like a fraud, that's the whole thing. So you don't even have to do 18. You just, you feel like a fraud, and that's why we're here. So great, 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 great. I'm going to reshare, and let's see. Okay. All right. So in a couple minutes, we're actually going to take these and the next piece, and then we're going to Um, and if you want to actually have access to these, this thing I'd suggest is take a screenshot. And for those of you on Mac, it's Function Command 4, and then you highlight what you want, and it'll just take a picture of it. So again, Function Command 4 is screenshot if you're on a Macintosh. If you're on a PC, I'm sorry, I can't help you. So in a couple minutes, we're going to have an opportunity to talk about the symptoms as well as this next piece I want to share. So this next piece is one of the first people to do research on imposter syndrome is a woman, Dr. Valerie Young. She wrote a book called The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women. And these 5 types here are, they're not actually types of imposter. They're the way we respond to appear confident so that people don't find out we're an imposter. So they're really responses to feeling like an imposter. So there's the perfectionist, the soloist, the natural genius, the expert, and the super person. Super person, not to be confused with superhero. Those are going to talk about being a superhero later in this, later in the presentation, but super person. So what I want to do is give you just a couple of sentences about each and just take some notes as like, you can be one of these, you can be all 5 of these at different times. So, but I'm going to give you some language around it so that you can find the ones that really you resonate with. So the perfectionist, I think it's the most easily understood. It's someone who has excessively high standards and feels like they should deliver a perfect performance 100% of the time. And the particular thing about the perfectionist is even if you knock it out of the park, then you just move the goalposts. And so you're never perfect. You're always achieving perfection, but perfect keeps moving. And the perfectionist focuses on how things get done. And what they're always looking is everything along the way needs to be perfect on the way to the next perfect. That's the perfectionist. The soloist focuses on who, and the who is them. So what the soloist is focused on is they have to do everything on their own, and it only counts if they didn't get help. So not only do they have to do it on their own, if you get help, it doesn't count. Getting help actually shows that you're a fraud and you don't deserve. That's the soloist. The third is the natural genius, which is like most of my clients sort of fall into this category. I think everyone has natural gifts and abilities. And again, we're going to talk about that later. But this specifically, the natural genius focuses on how, it's called how and when. And what that means is everything should happen easily and right away. So a natural genius is looking that for everything to be done right, easily the first time, and there's really no room for personal development and growth. And the natural genius, if you have to work hard at something, you think that, oh, I'm not good at this, and often natural genius will quit because they feel like not just like a fraud, but inept. The next one is the expert. And the expert it's focused on how much you know and how much you can do. So the expert is a need to know it all. And for the expert, true competence only comes from knowing absolutely everything about everything. And the last one is the super person. And the super person focuses on what's called how much and how many. And what that means is how the super person works harder than everybody. So they do more than everyone. And they also do every role. So the super person works harder than everyone and tries to do more roles than everyone. So, and I have take a minute and jot some notes. And if you want to take a screenshot of this too to refer back to, great. I'll talk to Colleen and I'll be able to get people the slides for this whole workshop if you want them, but even for just now, if you want screenshots so that you can work with them. So here's what we want to do now is I'm gonna leave a minute for maybe a couple of questions and comments. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. And, if anyone has a question or a comment at this point that's sort of quick, either some resonance or something you want me to clarify so far, just go into participants and you can raise your hand. And I'll just leave a few seconds for this. And if not, we're going to go into breakouts, into dyads, where I'm going to ask you to share. Let's see. I'm just seeing if I see. Great. Okay. Natural.
Michael, there is one question.
I see it.
Natural genius and perfectionist sound opposite. Can you kind of dig in more to that?
Yes. So I'm just so they can be, because they don't, these are the 5 ways that people respond and try and look competent because you feel like an imposter. So they don't have to be aligned. Like there's nothing here that says that they can't be opposite. So for right now, I'm going to leave it at that. So if you feel like you're a natural genius and a perfectionist, then that's actually okay if there's contradictions, because the reason that we respond this way, and this is that actually after we do some sharing, I'm going to talk about how we get this way, is we get these ways from childhood consciousness, and childhood consciousness is absolutely not logical. So we can choose many different ways to respond to things that feel dangerous or feel scary. So I'm going to leave it right there for now. But as we go, we'll dive more into these. Share. So the question's going to be, what did you share, and what are you learning? What did you share? What's it like? How's your imposter syndrome showing up? So if someone could raise I'm not seeing. I think Colleen, you can probably see. I'm not seeing it on my screen. So who'd like to be the first person to share and start normalizing this whole thing for us? Okay, that is Robert. Okay, and then Berta.
Well, I was rudely booted just as I was about to, say something to my dyad mate, Jessica. So
I'm so sorry. I thought you didn't have a partner. I was trying to shuffle people around.
Oh no, Colleen, you saved me. I was a soloist in the closet before you moved me to chatting it up with Jessica. But we got into a conversation about, do you want to keep this imposter, or do you want to get rid of this imposter?
Mhm.
And I was going to say that I think I'm curious to hear your reaction to this, Michael, that I think one of the cures of or getting rid of the imposter in you is to really trust yourself.
Yes.
And that's a really hard thing for anybody to do, I'm sure.
Yes, we are headed, when we get to the cure, our little preview is we're going to talk a lot about confidence, which is self-trust. And yeah, and of course we never, these parts, we never actually get rid of them. We just mitigate them, and we mitigate their impact. But they're parts of us, and this is part of our culture. But it's a great question. Thank you. Is there anything particular you want to share about you and your symptoms or your type, since you're already on, Robert?
Okay. Well, I was going to say, what I shared with Jessica is that I'm definitely the perfectionist, but that I've noticed over the course of my aging, I've probably become less of an imposter, just being more confident in who I am and what I am doing. But it's still there for sure, and it's most reflected in this sense of perfectionism.
Yeah. Thank you. Actually, you don't have to raise your hand in the chat. If you just want to raise your hand and say perfection is, just put your hand up in the screen. Yes, I experience perfectionism. Okay, now do this. A little bit, a lot. Like do the perfectionism meter. Okay, I'm seeing. All right, okay, people somewhere in the middle. Okay, so the one of the most common way I think people respond to feeling like an imposter is either perfection or procrastination. And they're actually two sides of the same coin. So if you find yourself procrastinating, it's often because you feel like you need to do something perfectly, or you feel like you need to do something perfectly, so you overwork, or you put a lot of pressure on yourself. So I think those are two of the main symptoms, and I experience both regularly. Okay, we have some hands raised. I thought I saw them. Where'd they go? I saw some hands raised. Where'd they go? Okay. All right, who else would like to share? This is like really one of the most important parts of tonight. So
Britta's got her hand up.
good. Can you get her?
Yep.
Hi. So I created a new archetype. I'm the super expert.
Oh, very good. You get double points. Say more about it. How does that show up for you?
You know, it shows up in terms of that I constantly feel that I have to demonstrate that I have more knowledge. At least I feel it shows up. You know, I have seen many moons, so it's self-awareness. And so when the imposter syndrome, creeps up, I'm aware of it, I acknowledge it, and I'm like, oh, that's what that is. And I kind of, pull back from it. And the ability to do multiple roles and really dig deep to understand them is something that I'm aware of, and I pull back to empower my team, right? Because otherwise it's kind of it's stifling for them, and it's not good for me either.
Yeah, that's a great, this is why I want to have people share, because there's so many ways this shows up. So perfectionism, it's like all the ways perfectionism shows up. And I love what you just said is, yeah, as a leader, if you're the super expert and perfectionist, then you may never give anything to your team.
Yeah.
So I love that. And then of course we're talking about, outcomes and results and empowerment and employee retention and satisfaction. I mean, it all comes up.
Oh yeah, and you got to get to a place where you allow what I call a controlled train wrecks.
Great. Good. We'll do next workshop on controlled train wrecks. Okay. Thank you. And I see, is it Dr. Pryor or I'm going to unmute you.
No.
Okay.
Not a doctor, not
Okay.
yet, but you may call me doctor if you'd like.
Sure.
So hi everyone. I was paired with someone who it was really lovely to speak with, and who said that they basically all applied to her except one, and that was the one that really resonated with me, which was really interesting. And that was something about that you dismiss the things that come naturally to you, and that you don't consider them to be accomplishments.
Yes.
And I think that would encompass the whole ethos of what I'm going through right now, because I'm looking at a career change or a shift, because I want to grow and I want to increase my skills, and I'm having so much trouble figuring out how to capitulate this next step when I can't be face to face and I don't know the people, because I feel like I've just had all these personal relationships that have gotten me to the next part, and it's very hard for me to explain what my skill set is. You kind of it's a person to person thing. And so I ordered a bunch of books, like Marketing 101, and I was like, well, I know I do this all the time, but maybe I don't have the jargon. And so I'd feel like, a late 30s lady who is taking Marketing 101 books home, and it feels like a massive big imposter. And not only that, but I really believe that I am an imposter. So that came up for me when I was listening to my partner talk. I was like, yeah, but she's fine. But I'm an actual imposter.
what's the word, Colleen, you used? It's so surreptitious. It's so
Hmm.
underground. Um, so the good news for you here is, again, previewing is the natural genius piece we are 100% going to talk about. And it's actually my sweet spot as a coach that I do is work with people around the things that you do naturally and helping you get what it is and language it so that you not only are no longer a imposter, but you're the only one in the world who can do what you do. So we're gonna talk about that tonight. And but isn't it interesting how two people can say I feel like an imposter and one can think, well, I am, but you're not. Like it's and we're gonna get to how that works in a few minutes. So thank you. So what do we call you? What is
Oh, Devin. My name is
Devin?
Devin.
Okay. Thank you,
Devin
Devin.
Pryor. Yeah.
Oh, got it. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure. Sure.
And I'm just curious, who resonates with Devin that the I kind of don't know why I'm good at what I do. So a lot of people, this is so common as people come to me and they're like, CEOs, executives, leaders, politicians, super successful, and they feel like frauds because they're like, I have no idea why I'm good at what I do. I have no idea why people like me. It just comes naturally, and I don't get it. And it's so important to actually get why you're good at what you do, so that you can stand on it. So again, we're going to get to that. We've got, so thank you, Devin. How about Monica? I'm unmuting you. Unmute yourself.
All right, thanks. So what I like about this is it gives me a way to kind of think about what the imposter syndrome is kind of doing to me. Like I've been ever since I was kind of exposed to the term, I've accepted that I have it. But this is a nice way to think about like how it's showing up. For me, it was perfectionist and expert, and they work kind of hand in hand in the sense that I want to show up as an expert, which means that everything I do in the area that I'm supposed to be an expert should be perfect. In a common way is if I'm doing a presentation and there's going to be a Q&A after. I'm very nervous about somebody asking me a question that I'm not going to give a flawless answer to. And then what happens after that is I go into the cycle, which is one of the things on the checklist where I beat myself up about how the answer could have been better.
Yes. Yes.
That's kind of how it shows up for me.
Yes. Thank you. So I'm looking at the time and like, oh my God, if we keep sharing, I'm never going to get to the cure. So thank you for that. And again, that's incredibly common is that almost, one of the things we haven't talked about, we'll probably do some sharing around is also the impact it has on like I'm just going to say this now so we don't have to wait, is that what the imposter syndrome does is it actually sucks the joy out of your life. It just we can't enjoy our successes. We can't enjoy the process of engaging. We're constantly afraid and anxious and worried. Again, it depends where you are in the spectrum, but anywhere on the spectrum, what it's doing is it's actually sucking the joy and the fulfillment out of your life. It also, it impacts relationships. It impacts whether or not you take risks, whether or not, as Devin was saying, you try something new. So there's hundreds of ways and hundreds of impacts. But for me, the biggest is it doesn't allow us to enjoy being ourselves. And frankly, as a coach and as someone who works with people on fulfillment, we're here to enjoy our lives. We're here to express who we are fully and enjoy it and revel in it. So the imposter syndrome gets in the way of all of that. All right, so thank you very much for the shares. We're going to talk about now how do we get it. We're going to talk about programming. So
can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
Sorry to interrupt, but so as imposter syndrome is actually a new term for me. I don't know, God knows how long I've been living with it.
Okay.
And then, how is it, an imposter syndrome could actually be a Dunning-Kruger effect. I mean,
I'm so glad you brought that up.
yeah.
It's actually so there's a great slide that I made that I'm not using tonight, but here's the punchline. People who are smart and successful experience the imposter syndrome. People who experience Dunning-Kruger effect, who are actually not particularly smart or successful, they actually over they what's the word? They believe that they're smarter and more successful and more capable than they are. So even the fact that you feel like an imposter actually is an indication that you're smart and successful. So you just got the slide. It cracked me up when I saw it. So thanks for asking. And I'm actually we're gonna move into how do we catch this virus. Okay, so I'm gonna blow through a couple of slides here. The imposter syndrome is actually a subset for anyone who's done my Defeat Your Arch Nemesis workshop. There's actually 5 survival archetypes that are common to all humans: the child, the victim, the teenager, the prostitute, and the saboteur. And the imposter syndrome is actually a subtype, a super common subtype of the saboteur. So if you want to know all of the survival archetypes and sort of all of the arch nemesis is out there, all the ways we get in our own way, I'll do the arch nemesis workshop again another time. But they're all ways we adapt. They're survival archetypes because they're all ways we adapt as children based on what happens to us that actually ends up being programming that runs our life. So the way we catch the imposter syndrome is we get programmed. So as children, we develop survival strategies to protect us. When we're children, they're brilliant at protecting us from the perspective and consciousness of being a child. But what happens is we grow up, and as we age and those and develop, those ways we protected ourselves, they actually prevent us from having the life we want. And so the programming essentially works as lessons we internalized as children from child consciousness. One of the big ones I've noticed as I've been doing the research here is that I think one of the biggest ways we develop imposter syndrome is as children, we look at adults and everything seems so easy to them. And so things seem hard to us and we don't quite get it. So we feel like we're always faking it, like we feel unworthy compared to an adult. I think that's one of the major ways we feel we develop imposter syndrome. But also it has a lot to do with our friends, our family, our society. We live in a society that's very goal-oriented, very competitive, very success-oriented. And often the messages we get, my daughter comes home with an A, and do I say, an A, nice job, nice work, you're awesome? Or do I say, not an A plus? Or, yeah, I expected you get it. Like, how do parents and people around us and teachers say things, what messages do they give us that are essentially perfectionist messages that have us feel like an imposter even when we're successful? So the way we internalize messages, either through repetition, so like from our parents and our family, they say the same thing over and over and over, or something really traumatic happens where, let's say we have a big success and no one recognizes it. It's, to us, it was huge and no one says anything. So there are all these ways, but so that's how we catch it, is we get programmed by society and their messages we internalize. I'm going to blow through this slide just because of time, but essentially the imposter syndrome is a subset of what the saboteur. And the saboteur, and this is where you asked about the Dunning-Kruger effect, is the saboteur is our rational mind disguising itself as reason. And so we're constantly rationalizing, and the saboteur has a monologue, and It's all about staying safe, keeping us small. And it's constantly saying things like, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not something enough. Don't be arrogant. It's the saboteur is the macro of the imposter, which is essentially like, you're faking it, you're a fraud, you're an imposter. It's a subset of the saboteur. So that's for people who've done my other workshops or want to know a little more about the overall theory. So a couple of ways this looks. Just you can look at the first one. Instead of my gifts, talents, genius, all that, you can say what I know and what I think others know. So we think we know a little bit and everyone else knows more, and that's not the reality. The reality is we know what we know, and we know some of what a bunch of people know, and they know stuff that we don't know. But we misinterpret reality, which makes us feel like an imposter. Another way to look at it as this is the natural genius. You make something look easy, but you discount its value because it's easy to you. That's a place where we feel like an imposter. So again, these are a couple of ways it shows up. So like I said, these are things from our childhood that protected us, that made us feel safe, that gave us the ability to navigate the context we were in as children, but they now prevent us as adults. So what we're doing here, this is one of the terms I use in coaching all the time, is what you run from runs you. So if you're running from feeling like a fraud, if you're running from feeling like people are going to find you out and find out you're an imposter, running from that actually runs your life. So what we're doing in this workshop, instead of running, is we're and coming into a relationship with what we've been running from to actually grow and evolve and become more resilient and more fulfilled and more successful and happy and all that. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to stop running. We're going to turn and face. So as Colleen said, I founded something called the University of Superheroes, and so I do personal development based on the superhero metaphor. And for those of you who don't know, Superman grew up in the comic books in Smallville. And Smallville is the place where he couldn't be himself, where he had to hide himself, where he had to hide his gifts, hide his power, hide who he really was, hide what he really thought. And in Smallville, some people call it your comfort zone, but we all know it's not comfortable, so I don't like to use that. I call it the land of the familiar. Sort of familiar thoughts, familiar feelings, familiar experiences, familiar highs, familiar lows, familiar frustration, familiar discouragement, familiar despair, all the disses. And what, one of the things to do here is, and we're just going to quickly break in just a 2-minute breakout room because of time. We're going to do 2 minutes of sharing what Smallville does your imposter syndrome keep you in? Like what in your life is small? Familiar thoughts, feelings, discouragement, despair, fear, anguish, anxiety. Like just go, this is the Smallville I live in because I feel like an imposter. We're just great. So welcome back. I know that was quick. I want to honor people's time. So here's what I ask is, here's the first thing, is when we're really honest with ourselves, the impact of being in our own way with the imposter syndrome or any of the other survival strategies like being a victim or child or any of that, when we're really honest with ourselves, it's pretty intense. And we've also gotten used to it. So it's sort of become our normal, like our normal Smallville. So, what I want to ask, as you're saying right now is like acknowledge like whatever, if you're just like, oh, it's this, like allow yourself to feel the impact in a real way. And I'm going to move to the cure instead of doing a share right now. But if people could just type into the chat, like, this is my Smallville. Like, this is what my life is like while I experience the imposter syndrome. That would help normalize what it's like. So for me, all right, I won't type it in. I procrastinate and I feel bad about myself when I procrastinate, and it just cycles. Like it just cycles and it gets worse and worse. I just feel worse and worse about myself because I feel like I'm not going to achieve what I think I should. So, and it gets pretty bad sometimes. All right, I'm going to move to the cure because that's what you're here for. Okay, here we go. The cure. So the good news is all right. Oh, I just gave it away. Okay. I've developed a term for the cure for the imposter syndrome, and I call it badass humility. And I'm gonna give you some language to set this up, because we all kind of know what we think a badass is, but badass and humility don't seem to come together. So I'm going to give you some language so that you can really get, well, what do I mean by badass humility? Because that is the cure for feeling like an imposter. So badass humility is the state of being both proud and humble at the same time. And again, those might seem like they're in opposition, but they go perfectly together. So what we're looking for is the ability to develop badass humility. So here I want to give you some language. These are my definitions. So the first is, for me, humility is about accurate self-awareness. It's an accurate assessment of both your strengths and your weaknesses. So in any way that you are like overselling or overly prideful or inappropriately just overblowing your strengths, you're actually an ego, and you're being prideful. And at any point that you are overselling or your weaknesses, you're also an ego. And you've been with people who are like, oh, that wasn't really very good, or oh, I'm not really that. It's a false humility, and it's kind of icky. So what we're looking for is accuracy. So for me, humility is accuracy. So proud, and this is where I love the definition of proud, is to be proud is to feel deep pleasure or satisfaction as a result of your achievements or your qualities. So it's that deep pleasure and satisfaction of being ourselves that we're looking for. And then humble is not being prideful, it's not being haughty, it's not being arrogant. It's actually the ability to be aware of and accepting of your weaknesses, mistakes, and failures. So actually, humble is powerful. To be humble is actually a very powerful thing, because you're able to be vulnerable to the truth, and that gives you the ability to work with it versus dismissing it. So what I call badass humility is to be humble and proud at the same time, which makes you accurate, which is, if you think into your life of people who you know who get their strengths and they get their weaknesses and they own it all, for me, they're my favorite people. They're my favorite people to be around because they're powerful, but they're not overpowering, and they're clear, and they're badasses. So that to me is the cure. And so what I want to talk through is, well, how do we get there? How do you develop badass humility? So essentially the cure is reprogramming. So, and I don't want to spend a lot of time with this, but this slide, and when I send it out, this is actually called the transformation equation. Is your programming equals your thoughts. So your programming leads to your thoughts lead to your feelings lead to your actions lead to your results. In this case, your programming is an imposter, and then you get the imposter results, which is perfection, overwork, dismissing, feeling discouraged, feeling ashamed, all that. What we want to do now is I'm going to teach you the cure, or the remedies that get you to the cure, which reprogram this. And this is all based in neuroelasticity, the cutting edge of how our brains work and our ability to actually recreate new pathways in our brains. So even though this looks like comics, this whole thing is based in the latest study and the latest science of neuroplasticity. So that's where we're heading. So again, curing the virus. We're getting rid of the virus so that we have a healthy brain, healthy emotions, healthy mind. They go in a circle. We actually build our confidence. We build our resilience. We build our humility. We build our ability to be vulnerable. So that's what the cure is, actually reprogramming. So how do we attain this? It's not a vaccine. I just had to put that in there. It's not a vaccine. We don't get inoculation. It's actually a series of remedies. So the first is to apply the balm of humanity. I'm going to talk about each of these in a minute. Apply the balm of humanity. Give yourself a daily dose of self-compassion. Take vitamin confidence and get in what I call the right shape. So, and again, these are based in neuroplasticity and the belief, the knowing that we can actually reprogram ourselves out of imposter into what I'm calling badass humility. So the balm of humanity is something we've already been doing, and that's why participation was so important tonight, is to acknowledge that you're human. You're just like everybody else. It's this paradox. You're unique, but you're common. So you're a unique individual, but you also are having a personal experience of the human experience. And part of the human experience in our culture, for a bunch of reasons that we can identify, we feel like imposters. So simply apply the balm of humanity daily and just acknowledge, I'm human. I am having a personal experience of a human experience. I feel like an imposter, and that's normal, and it's okay. So it's that simple, is acknowledge your humanity, acknowledge your commonness, as well as your uniqueness. So that's the one. Apply the balm of humanity. And it's as simple as, like, everyone can say it right now. I'm human. I'm normal. I'm having a personal, unique experience of the human experience. Thank goodness. Okay. Remedy number 1. Remedy number 2, daily doses of self-compassion. And so compassion is not saccharine. We're not talking about being weak and letting ourselves off the hook and being like, oh, poor baby. Oh, like, oh, it's not that. It's self-compassion is actually truth-telling. So your daily dose of self-compassion is about truth-telling. It's about that accuracy. It's telling the truth about yourself. And so I'm going to give you some tools here for self-compassion. The first is to understand that you're always in one of the 4 stages of learning. So those of us who have big jobs, have big responsibilities, who are successful, we are still learning. So there are always 4 stages of learning. Unconscious incompetence, which is blind spots and ignorance. Through our entire lives, we're going to run into these. They happen. It's normal. Conscious incompetence is that time when you know that you don't know what you're doing, and so you really have to think about it and practice it. The third is conscious competence, where you're thinking about it, but you're getting good at it. And the 4th stage is unconscious competence, also known as flow, also known, going back to the natural genius. We actually develop unconscious competence. It's not something, we get there. So there is a point at which we are actually blind to that skill or that ability, but we've developed conscious competence. So part of self-compassion is embracing that you're always somewhere in the learning and cycle. And when you bump into something, you're like, oh, where am I there? And that's actually a form of self-compassion. Like, oh, right, I'm learning this. Got it. I don't know how, so I'm consciously incompetent. And the conscious incompetent is the most uncomfortable place to be. And it's the place where we most often feel like an imposter, because we are learning but we know we don't know yet. It's very uncomfortable. And so part of self-compassion is going, okay, right, I'm learning this. It's okay. So that's step one for me, in self-compassion. So now I want to give you a tool for self-compassion, and I call it speak the truth. And again, speaking the truth is being really accurate. So the key here is to start to learn the monologue, blah, 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 blah. You're not good, you're not smart, you're an imposter, learn the monologue of your imposter. And the trick, the tool here is what I call acknowledge and refute. So since this part is a little kid and it was developed in your young consciousness, it actually needs to be heard. So if you just argue with it, it doesn't work. What you need to do is acknowledge it and then speak the truth to it. So for example, let's say you're someone who is looking for a new job, and you just shared you're looking for a new job. You don't quite know how to say why you're successful, and so your imposter's going, you're never going to get another job. You were just lucky. You're just good at talking to people, and that's not a big deal. So the acknowledge and refute would be, yeah, you're right. I have this unique set of skills. I don't quite understand what they are, but and yeah, you're saying like, oh, all you did was like develop relationships. So that's acknowledge. And then the refute is, you know what? I can actually figure out what I'm good at, but I know I'm good at some stuff that's made me successful. And that thing you're saying, oh, you only just like made relationships. The truth is, relationships are a critical skill, and it's part of what makes me successful. So this is a tool that I use regularly myself. I've been teaching to clients for years. And so what you do is you learn the monologue, you acknowledge the little bit of truth that your imposter is telling you, and then you refute it with real truth. And all of this is self-compassion. And it doesn't look like what people tend to think self-compassion is. Again, if we had more time, we would bring some people in and share and do these, but we don't have time tonight. I am going to offer an opportunity for people to talk to me like later. We can do them later. The next is vitamin confidence. So vitamin confidence, this is my sweet spot. So here's the thing about confidence. Everyone's going to tell you to develop confidence, to write down every single success you've ever had and like read it and read it and read it and get it. And that is absolutely a way to develop confidence, but it is not the only way. And in my 15 years of coaching, I've seen this huge gap. And the gap is the way to develop confidence is to really get who you are. So this next slide is most people, this is what I call my very sophisticated slide. Most people have a very underdeveloped and limited version of who you think you are. And that's the way you go around in the world. You think you're an imposter, you think you're no good, or you think everyone else is better, or you just literally don't get what's awesome about you. It's very limited. So there's a version of you that you really are. And when you get who you really are, when you get your gifts and your strengths and your talents and your natural genius and your values, I'm going to actually give you a diagram in a minute. You automatically become confident because, again, you realize you are unique. There's no one else like you, and you do what you do in a way that no one else does. That's a way to confidence that I've been doing with clients for 15 years, and I don't see anywhere else. It's really rare. So I want to show you how you get there. It's what I call your superhero identity. And your superhero identity, like I said, all superheroes have a particular thing. They have a set of superpowers, they have a story, and they have a set of values, and that makes them their particular superhero. All of us have the same three things. All of us have a set of superpowers, which are the things you do easily and effortlessly, like you're not even trying, and other people are mystified by them. It is absolutely critical that you know what your superpowers are. Some people call it your genius. Some people call it your brilliance. I call them superpowers because they're bigger than the mind. They're actually powers that you exert in the world, and you barely know that you're doing it. So you need to know your superpowers. You need to claim your story. Another way to confidence is to look at the life you've lived and claim the power of the life you've lived. Everything you've achieved, everything you've overcome, any, trauma or dramatic experience you've had has created who you are, and you've lived a life that no one else has lived. It's important to claim that, because not only does that reify who you are and give you confidence and strength, it also points you to where you're going. And the third is, you need to know what your values are. You need to know, and by values, I mean the things that you honor. When you honor them, they bring you alive. You need to know what values you honor, and by aligning with them, you actually feel more powerful and more confident because you're being who you are authentically. So that, this is work I do with people. There's, I just want to say that knowing yourself and knowing yourself accurately leads to confidence, not simply adding up everything you've succeeded and then you'll feel confident. Actually, for me, what leads to true confidence is knowing accurately and truly who you are, and then you can be and express that in the world. And again, that's what I think we're all here for. The core underlying all of this, and this is the mantra of my business and my coaching, is to find miraculous what you take for granted, dismiss, or diminish. As soon as you start to find yourself miraculous, you develop a level of confidence that, like, you just can't stop. Like, it doesn't go away. So that's vitamin confidence. And then the last piece here is what I call get in the right shape. And I need to look at the time here. Okay, we have time for this. So I've been studying a lot of somatic psychology, somatic coaching. And what we say in somatics is that we develop what's called a safety shape. And the safety shape is thoughts, feelings, and actually somatic, our body. So I'm going to ask everyone to take a leap of faith here. And what we're going to do is an embodied practice that's very simple. I'm going to ask you to get into the shape, the physical shape that your body wants to get into when you feel like an imposter. And so when your mind is going, you're not smart, you didn't get it, you need to be perfect, you weren't perfect. And so I'm going to say is your body, as you run that monologue, your body's going to want to start to get into a certain shape like this person on the slide. And what I'm going to say is take the shape to the full extreme. And so you can turn your camera off. No one has to see you, but take the physical embodiment that your safety shape, your imposter syndrome wants your body to fully take. So for me, I curl up, I curl up, I curl up, I curl up, I keep going. And eventually I find myself sort of fetal. And just sort of in that defeated, like I'm not going to try. So this is this moment here really, if you fully go into this exercise, this moment can actually be life-changing. So when you take that to the extreme, when I did a version of this at the Battery, I had 90 people lying on the floor in fetal position. It was, because it's all, for almost all of us, our safety shape wants us to be small and tucked in and safe. So now that you're there, feel what it feels like to be there. And now take a breath. Now find a shape physically that feels great, that feels like badass humility. Like take that shape. So if you want to stand up, if you want to move your body, if you want to rock around, but take the shape of feeling like a badass, like feeling accurately knowing yourself, confident in yourself, humble, self-compassionate, part of humanity. Find that shape. You can do it sitting, you can do it standing, you can do it walking, and feel that. because this here actually rewires your brain to live in the world differently. This is what neuroplasticity looks like. So for me, it's actually very simple. It's simply like when I stand, it's like, like that for me is what is the antidote to my imposter shape. Okay. All right, I'm just gonna put on so I can see all of you. I don't know if I can. Yeah, I'm gonna stop the share for, let's see. Okay, no, I'm not gonna stop the share. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna complete this. I'm gonna give you a couple of exercises you can take with you, and then I'll open it up if we want to do a Q&A and a discussion, but I want to honor the time and complete this. And then if people want to hang out and ask questions and talk and all that, we can do that. So here's the deal. So essentially, imagine for yourself that you've attained badass humility, that you've left your imposter behind, that you feel you know who you are authentically, you feel connected to humanity and like you're normal, having the experience you're having, you know who you are, you know what your gifts are, you know what your values are, you've claimed your story, you feel great about yourself, and that you're working with your body, you're working with your shape, and you're feeling in your soma, in your system, you're feeling yourself as someone who has tons of possibility and is both feels proud and feels humble. Like imagine feeling like that, and then imagine like what becomes possible for you, what changes, and like just take a moment and write down like what becomes possible if you let this go and you shift out of imposter into, a proud, humble person. This is not, before I go into celebration bowls, this is an opportunity to people have questions, comments, shares, anything. This is an opportunity. I see Dorothy. You're not, I'm asking you to unmute yourself. There we
Sorry
go.
about that. Thank you. This has been really, really helpful. I really enjoyed it. The one thing that the last slide you say, what could be possible? And one of the fears that I have about like coming into my full self and shining as brightly as I should shine is
Yes.
the fear that I will create imbalance with jealousy and envy. And that's held me back. And perhaps it's from a trauma that I had early on in my teenage years where, being a confident person was kind of punished.
Yes.
And I'm just curious if you encounter that with other clients and what your advice is there.
All the time. I was on with a client today. She's writing a book, and we were talking about motherhood, and she said her son actually was quite ill, has a condition where she really had to pay attention to him, and she was in the schoolyard and she heard one of the other mom goes, "Oh, there's Miss Perfect. Oh, no. She thinks she's the greatest mom." And in our culture, people tear each other down. For some reason, someone's success makes other people, because we have imposter syndrome, feel like a failure. So it's super common for us to be trained. How many have heard, don't get too big for your britches, don't rock the boat, don't be arrogant, don't be prideful? Like, we've heard all this. So it's part of our cultural conditioning, and we can, and as part of what I unwind with people, and we unwind this. And then the one thing I would say is one of the most important things to read is Marianne Williamson's piece about, it was attributed to Nelson Mandela, but it's like, who are it? I can't quote it right now because I've been talking for too long, but we can find, so if someone wants to go Google it and find it, but essentially says, who are you not to be your biggest self? Who are you not to stand in your brilliance? it's our light, not our shadow, that gives other people permission to live in their light. So this is, this is something like, if you want to schedule time with me, I'd love to talk about it. It comes up all the
I'd
time.
love to. I will be. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Who else has a thing? That's it. Thank you, Michelle. Who else would like to share, ask questions, comments? This is our free time. How about, go
I
ahead.
think what helps me with imposter syndrome is like at the root of it, you're so focused on like some sort of achievement or some sort of like job or role. And like what helps me is just to feel good in and of myself for existing.
Yes.
Right. Like I'm ripping off Eckhart Tolle. This is not mine. It's just,
We're all ripping
just,
off everybody. Don't worry.
yeah, right. It's easier.
Well, it's called
just knowing that you are, and that's enough. And then whatever you achieve, your superhero quality, that's just part of your life experience. And I don't, you could die tomorrow. So make just collect experiences for the sake of living life, not because it completes you.
Right. No, that's a great point. And what I say, I had this argument with my therapist for like a couple of years about, I was saying, yes, being comfortable with simply being alive and feeling good about being alive is great, but it's sort of, it's high practice. And so what I tell people is I offer a little bit of a cheat way there, which is to actually get who you are uniquely. And that helps you on your way to being comfortable with simply existing. It's sort of like a cheat step. But yeah, no, thank you for that. It's that is simply being, comfortable and happy that we exist. There's this great parable. I won't tell it. It takes 10 minutes. So I'll tell you the punchline. It's like someone's talking to like an enlightened being, and the person saying, like, I feel bad of myself. I feel unworthy. And the enlightened being says, how old are you? And the guy says, 65. And the guy says, seems like the universe approves. You're here. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Who else? Before I'll take a couple more. Share link for scheduling. It's www. That should get you to my scheduling system.
I have a question for you, Michael.
Hi, Allison.
Hi. I'm wondering if you have any good techniques. The example in the schoolyard was a good one, but I mostly get it at work where people see your power and then they say something like that. And because I do deeply care about what other people think and how to bring light to them, I shut down. So I'm just curious if you have any good quick response, or, sometimes it's good just to have a throwback to that bad behavior.
It's funny because I asked my client this morning what she would have said. And what she would have said is, I have to be a good mom. If I'm not a good mom, my kid will die.
That's good.
It was just so, she's like, I'm, and not dealing with their like judgment, and just saying thank you. So one of the best ways to take a compliment is to say thank you. Thank you for noticing. Thank you for noticing that I'm good at what I do. And as a leader, like I get you're a leader, I think that when that kind of thing shows up, when someone else feels the need to take someone else down, is because they feel insecure, is to actually get personal time and help them figure out what they're good at, what they're doing well.
That's a great idea.
I find that that's one of the, because you can't do the, what you can't do is take it personally.
Right.
Because really it says about them and not about you. And, we want people to see our brilliance. We just live in this tricky society. So what I'm looking for is everyone experiences badass humility. What one of the things I call it in another workshop is, we want to live in a superhero driven economy, where everyone is aligned with their superpowers, aligned with their values, aligned with their story, living that authentically. And that actually drives our economy versus an economy where people are being paid to be mediocre. And there's a lot of that. So thank you. That was a great question. Thank you. I do want to give, let's see. Yes, the second of the 4 agreements. Thank you, Devin. Yeah. Okay, can I give you guys gratitude bowls? I'm going to do it. So gratitude bowls are, and I actually have mine in our house here. So it looks like this. Where's the, looks like that. So it's a bowl full of something. It can be pennies. It can be little gems. It can be diamonds if you got them. And what you do is you put it out somewhere really prominent in your house. Because the thing is we don't, part of building our badass humility is self-acknowledgement. So what you do is you pick one up every time you walk by, you pick one up, you hold it, and you acknowledge something about yourself, but specifically until you feel it. And the feel is until you get warm fuzzies. So you grab it and you go. And so for me right now, it would be, I worked really hard developing this workshop. I was really nervous about it. And despite what any of you think, I'll be like, it went fine. And I felt good. And you hold on to it until you're like, yeah, like you literally feel the warm fuzzy. And I know this sounds a little weird, but this is what repatterning our brain and reprogramming ourselves and exercising neuroplasticity looks like. And so you keep it out. And so it can be, I got up early today instead of sleeping in. Feel it. I did yoga. I was nice to my brother. Like whatever it is you start developing the pattern and the physiology and the thoughts of acknowledging yourself, of self-acknowledgement, which actually starts to build this feeling of pride, of enjoying and being satisfied in being yourself. I've given clients this exercise. They do it daily, and in a month, they feel like a different person. So it's something also, I'll put it together in the slides. I'll add it to the slides. And when we send out the slides, we'll send out the gratitude bowls with it. So